All right. I think we can go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Today we are talking about Web3 and the future of work. So Web3 is set to transform work as we know it, and decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs, are the vehicle that are going to lead the charge. And then, as we all know, simultaneously, the pandemic has accelerated the digital transformation of the future of work. In a lot of folks' opinions, particularly those on the stage, we think that potentially in the future, we are all going to have a lot more autonomy on where, how, and when we work. We are also going to have the freedom to do more fulfilling work. We will have more decision-making power. The range of compensation structures is going to be much wider. And in addition to that, we will all probably be working for more than one employer. So the role of the employee and the employer is going to change pretty dramatically going forward. With that, I just wanted to do a quick introduction for everyone on the panel, because they are the ones that are spearheading a lot of the innovation when it comes to the future of work. And then we'll jump into a few questions and wrap up with a quick conclusion. So my name is Akshi Federici. I am the general partner at The Capital, a venture fund management company. Prior to that, I was one of the founding partners at Kraken Ventures. Before that, I was at Kraken, Consensus, Status.im, BlackRock, Condé Nast, and the Boston Consulting Group, BCG. So that's a quick background on myself. And the first person here we have on the panel is Adam Jackson. He's the co-founder of Braintrust. It's a decentralized talent network that matches knowledge workers with clients for either contract or full-time work. Adam also is a co-founder of digital asset management firm Cambrian Asset Management, and he has founded 4 marketplaces, invested in over 150 companies across a wide range of industries. Next on the stage, we have Cokie Hasiotis. She's the founder and CEO of Twali. Twali is a decentralized marketplace providing Web3 projects access to a vetted community of non-technical experts across a range of verticals that includes accounting, legal, compliance, marketing, and several more. Next on the stage, we have Spencer McDonald. He's the founder of Spearbit. It's a marketplace for Web3 security auditors specifically, with clients that include names like OpenSea, Optimism, and Paradigm. He's also an advisor for crypto policy at Lincoln Network, and he's a former security manager at the Pentagon. With this great lineup, I would like to kick off the panel with a kind of a bigger picture question for how each of you envisions the future of work in Web3, and in particular, how does it differ from Web 2 when it comes to the role of employees and employers? Does anyone want to go first?
Great question. So the way I think about this is, broadly speaking, in Web 2, talent is verticalized, right? So you're like, oh, okay, I'm at this job, and my growth is all about this company's growth that I work at, and we're very linked. In Web 3, we have this opportunity for horizontalized talent. So our talent can be more plug and play. For someone like me, say I'm a compliance person, maybe I'm really useful one day at one job, but the next day they're dealing with marketing, and I'm like, I'm gonna sneak out the back, you know? So being able to be plug and play, like, hey, I'm gonna do this one day and this the next, at different companies, at different institutions, at different DAOs, however you wanna look at it, is actually a really empowering opportunity. And it takes us from, we're an employee culture in Web 2 to everyone's their own employer in Web 3. And everyone's operating autonomously to do their thing how and when they want to do it. It empowers you to do the work you want to do, and it empowers you to do the work how you want to do it.
That's great. I think George just...
What's up?
Sorry about that.
To add on to Kokie's point, I'd say that it also allows you to fit into these organizational cultures that, previously, if you joined Google or Facebook, you'd have to learn that culture through their onboarding process. Mm-hmm. With some of these marketplaces, with the folks on stage, they have that culture and it's open sourced. So if you're a professional services freelancer, you can fit in and add value because of the open source nature of the onboarding process, right? So that's kind of a difference, I think, between Web 2 freelance marketplaces and Web 3.
I totally agree with that. The only thing I would add is we call it kind of the unbundling of corporate America. So right now, if you're a knowledge worker, you sort of got to join a firm and you trade all of your autonomy over your location and your life and what you work on and even where you work for a steady paycheck. And when you create a labor network that's actually owned by the labor instead, you lower fees, right? You get rid of that kind of middleman's big markup. You attract a lot of the talent, which attracts then a lot of the employers, and that's what we're seeing with Braintrust, is actually we have way more demand than we have talent. We have more clients than we have talent, knowledge workers. And so what that does is it allows talent workers to kind of unbundle out of the corporate environment and just pick off gigs that they want. And it's all remote. Like we insist on Braintrust that it's all remote. Like if somebody wants to meet in an office, they can, but
Right.
you can't post jobs that are like, you have to come to the office in New York. And so now that was like one of the major blockers of people becoming freelancers was like, oh, I don't want to like start an agency and answer RFPs and fucking market myself all day.
Yeah.
So on a network like Braintrust, it's like, hey, I'll just pick off jobs and work when I want to for whom I want to.
Got it. So George, you just joined us. If you don't mind doing a quick introduction, and then the question is, how do you envision the future of work being different in Web 3 versus Web 2?
So yeah, I'm George. I'm the head of business and operations for Commonwealth. Again, sorry for being late. Generally, I think, having people own their autonomy, and so with that, especially like benefits model, I think is really important. And so, it's like when you switch jobs, you have to roll over your 401k, you have to switch health insurance. Like when you go to the pharmacy, you have to do a whole thing. Very, very painful. And so it leads to a lot of friction when you switch jobs. I think by transitioning a lot of this into, personal control, you can enable better transition and people can really focus more on what they're interested in doing. From there, I think also if you can start to move more of the power from the top of an organization to the actual working groups themselves, it enables people to really just focus on doing good work, and you can really track an organization according to certain KPIs. I think one of the things that I always like to push against in DAO thinking is that for the vast majority of people, they care about stability, and they don't care about like autonomy and like a lot of the idealism that we care about. And so with that, it's like, if we actually want DAOs to make an impact on work organizations, we have to understand how do we actually translate a lot of the benefits that people care about in a Web 2 organization into more of this Web 3 model.
That's great. So, as you guys have been going on this journey of innovative models and innovative, solutions for a Web3 world, what are some of the challenges, the unique challenges and lessons that you have learned along the way? We had a little bit of a conversation about that as we were prepping for the panel, but would love to hear what...
I'm happy to start with that one. We've been at this for 4 years, so I've learned lots of hard lessons and challenges, living through some of them even. The biggest one, though, is like, especially now, but even during last year, all the hype, no one gives a shit about this technology. They care about the value it's providing them, right? Like if you talk to, we have clients like Goldman Sachs and Nike and Nestle and Porsche and 150 of the Fortune 1000 active clients on Braintrust. They don't give a fuck about blockchain. They care about, the word decentralized is totally meaningless to them. They care that they can access talent directly at way cheaper rates than Accenture or PwC or some other consulting firm is going to charge them. And if they want to hire them, they're not going to pay some penalty, and all the reputation lives on the app, and like that's cool for them. And then they're like, how'd you pull that off? I'm like, well, we're built on Ethereum, and like, no more. So that was a good lesson for us.
Anyone?
I'll go next. Adam's right. So for Spearbit, we do security audits for protocols and projects that have hundreds of millions of dollars in TVL, right? Our clients, they like the fact that we have freelancers, but at the end of the day, we have to deliver high-quality security engineering at scale, right? So to Adam's point, how do you do that? You have to start having SLAs, service level agreements, and you have to have operations that isn't just at the same level of centralized organizations, but is better, right? And the community has to be focused on that. And to the other conversation about the differences of how do you maintain that culture, you have to write it down and you have to continuously iterate on that. So that's the challenge, right? Is this is a new technology, it's a new way of doing work. How is it not just at parity with the previous organizational methods, but it's actually better?
Yeah, so in a very different realm as previous two. So with Commonwealth, we work with a lot of like the major DAOs like DYDX, Osmosis, etc. With that, like we've had a lot of more like Web3 challenges in that the pace of change with this technology is so rapid. So you really need to like focus on iterating quickly and stay as close to your customer as possible. And I do, again, agree with everything of like, try to boil it down into like real words, not jargon, try to solve user problems, have good operations. All of this is very true. But especially when you're working with more of like the DAO-centric people, it's like the vision for what they're building changes month to month. Thankfully, it's slowed down a little bit in the bear. But you just really have to like stay close to them and understand what their problems are. And also with that, you need to focus more on like being an approachable person and like relationships, because there is so much of a culture in like crypto and DAOs and Web3 that they don't like corporate people.
Totally. Yeah, don't be trad and no one gives a fuck are great wrap-ups. We've learned those. I think the other thing we've learned is that the real world doesn't map to what I think our vision of the future of work is yet, right? So like you go and start a company and you fill out a little form online and it's like, oh, I'm going to be an LLC. It's like, well, where the fuck does a DAO fit in here, right? So I think one of the major challenges is like we can have all these platitudes about how futuristic and cool and fancy we are, but ultimately the real world doesn't map to us, and it creates a ton of problems for our users. Not having health insurance, not having regular benefits, not having a salary, getting your salary taxed as capital gains. Like these are major problems for our users, and the real world isn't there yet. So I think the approach here on stage that we're leaning towards is hide it. hide the fact that we can do things better with this technology and really just focus on solving major user problems.
So since we have a little bit of time, I'm going to throw in like a curveball question, which is, from my perspective, coming from Consensus Academy and developers and kind of like the quality and matching up quality, et cetera. One of the questions that I have for you guys in your vision of Web3 is, how are you thinking about quality of talent as well as kind of their experience? And then simultaneously, is there a better world in the future with respect to work in Web3 that is more inclusive? So for example, peer evaluations or the quality of the work speaking for itself as opposed to who did it, right? And I'm getting at this much more from the point of view of women and men, right? So this is the curveball question, kind of an open-ended question for how do you envision a better world that is built on Web3 with respect to quality of work?
Yeah, I'll take that. I think one of the things we're really thinking about is, in fact, I'll back up. In my last life, I started a small consultancy called Lasagna, which I co-founded with my friend Will, who's in the corner there. What's up, dude? Will and I managed to build in 12 months a consultancy that did 7 figures in revenue with 2 people, and we built what is now today Stripe Crypto, which is fucking incredible. Like, luck just kept striking, I think. And the reason we were able to do that is because of this smaller model allows us that freedom, right? And I think when we think about this inclusivity angle, one of the things that was so exciting for us is that we actually wrote in that we owned our work. So I used to be a BCG consultant. I didn't even own my 20-minute bathroom break, right? Like I didn't own anything. But having this ownership over our work was really, really special for us, and it allowed us to resell things. It allowed us to repackage things and sell them onwards, right? So one of the things that gives us an opportunity for in Web3 is if you're doing your work and your work lands on chain, then you actually have this like, oh, okay, Cokie said this at this point, or Cokie wrote this at this point, or Cokie completed this project. Now it's living in my wallet as a resume that I did this thing. And that's really cool. That's a major, major unlock. And we're not seeing it just yet, but at Twali, it's something we're really interested in, giving these non-technical folks that ownership.
Reputation on chain.
Yeah, it's a reputation algorithm that lives on chain. But
really
one of
cool.
the things we're most excited about is actually when you do work on Twali, all that work is processed through a legally binding smart contract. When that smart contract is complete, kind of POAP appears in your wallet like, hey, I did this thing.
That's cool.
Which is very cool.
That's very cool.
And owning your work is so special, I think, from the inclusivity angle, right?
Yeah.
How many times have people told you didn't do what you did?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's literally going to be there. It's going to be dope.
That's amazing.
I think this is actually a case where decentralization can help. Because I think if you decentralize and you open source how you onboard people into your community, hypothesis there is that maybe it's going to reduce bias. Right. If you have a centralized onboarding process where it's like 2 or 3 people or 1 person and doing hiring, more likely to get bias, right? But if you have a community-driven approach, right, things are written down, the quality standards, both to onboard into the freelance community and to stay in it and get promoted, it's all written down, it's transparent, people can vote on that. I think you can probably reduce bias. And then, by the way, that's what we do at Spearbit in terms of to onboard to our community as a security auditor. Onboard at different levels. We take people that are experts. We call them lead security researchers, but we also take apprentices from boot camps. And everyone's welcome. We have very clear onboarding. You take a test. There's an interview. There's KYC. There's a vetting process. But if you pass that, you're in, regardless of your background, with people from all around the world.
So slightly different realm. I would go with agree with like removing the bias through decentralization. And I think the important part with DAOs is really moving the work outside of the organization itself. And so like, what does that look like? I think Maker and Osmosis are the 2 best examples of this, where you have like one central product that's getting developed. So, Maker's like DAI and like loan product, or Osmosis is DEX. With that, you then split off the actual work of like building this and running the organization into a variety of different sub-DAOs that then apply to get funding from the DAO itself. People can approve the budgets based on the work that those groups have been doing. And so with this, you can think of it as like you can have a number of different development agencies that maybe are working on a variety of different RFPs for the DAO, whichever ones, actually getting their work completed on time, solving the most complex problems, continues to get funding. If you're causing a lot of problems, you get cut. Similarly, like Osmosis is great, where they have, I believe it's like 3 or 4 different marketing sub-DAOs, and pretty much whichever one is getting the best like ROI on their investment is getting more funding the next quarter. And so with this, you can move a lot of the evaluation of work from like personal relationships in this like hierarchy, and move it more towards like, are you actually completing your KPIs? But you can still maintain the benefits and values of a more centralized work organization by having people on a specific team that needs to work towards getting results.
Maker's been spicy with that, by the way, in terms of KPIs on the governance forum. Yeah. But anyways.
We at Braintrust, we have about 71,000 talent members, and the vast majority have been screened by the community. And it's a lot of this, like, it's asynchronous, so you prove like what you can do without sitting in front of somebody. And so we've worked all these little tactics to try to iron out bias on the gender ethnic side. But the other bias I think is really important is geographic bias. So a lot of these employers, clients on Braintrust or 90% are based in the US, and they'll post a job and be like, Pacific time only. And we're like, come on, dude, like that completely defeats. They're like, fine, Pacific or Eastern. We're like, no, that is. So getting them to change behavior has actually been really hard. So what we did was we tweaked the app and asked talent, instead of where do you live, and a lot of these people live nowhere, right? They live everywhere, which is cool, right? So, but we tweaked the forms to say, which time zones are you able to overlap with for at least 2 hours a day?
That's smart, yeah.
And people in South Africa are like, yeah, I'll hit Eastern 2 hours a day, no problem, right? And then our clients are like, we don't really care where they live as long as it's not an OFAC nation, but like, oh, they'll service Eastern for 2-3 hours, great, yeah, we'll hire them. And like, that was our unlock. We like fixed geographic. We're moving toward fixing geographic bias with that feature.
Right. So that's definitely very pro inclusion.
Yeah, absolutely, right? I mean, talent is distributed evenly around the world, opportunities not.
And I think from an employer perspective, it's great too, because you can then access quality talent without being constrained by the pool that's in your geography.
And by the way, this is why you need crypto, because probably for Braintrust, probably for Twali, definitely for Spearbit, we have freelancers in places that don't have functioning banking systems.
Yep.
So for any of the crypto skeptics watching this, right, you know, token or no token, you need crypto to be able to empower talent in places that normally literally cannot get paid.
Yep.
USDC is like the biggest unlock to the future of work literally ever.
Absolutely, yeah. Access to, yeah. And to your point, every employee becomes their own employer, right? That's it, yeah. So the next question that I have is, you know, as you go about implementing various solutions, how are they customized based on, let's say, for example, different kinds of DAOs, so investment DAOs versus other kinds of DAOs? And what are some of the areas in your landscape that have seen more traction than others? And why do you think that is the case?
I'll go first quickly. So our network connects knowledge workers with clients, mostly just tech people. Mm-hmm. But then we asked the community, we're like, hey, like, what else should we do? Like, most of the time you're not looking for a job or a gig. Like, how else could Braintrust be helpful to you? Mm-hmm. And we got all this heat and demand around how do I advance my career, right? Like, I'm a junior DevOps person. How do I become a CTO someday or a VP DevOps? Like, what are the 5 subway stops between me and where I want to go in my career? Mm-hmm. And so the Braintrust DAO is actually reorganizing itself right now around giving and getting advice, whether it's low touch stuff like help me negotiate this offer on Braintrust, or higher touch stuff like help mentor me to get up to be a CTO or a CMO someday. Mm-hmm. And so our DAO, this is very, very early days, we're just starting this, but all the members of our DAO are like really excited about that, sort of, you know, helping each other move through their careers.
That's great.
I'll go next. Yeah, so one thing we already brought up, which is the promotion process, similar to Braintrust, Spearbit's, you know, working through what does it take to go up the various levels in our community. How do you go from an apprentice, you know, they make decent amount of money, they make $3,000 a week currently, up to a LSR, who currently our current market rate is $20,000 a week for LSRs for security audits. It's a good living, but how do you start from the bottom and eventually make it? And then the other thing we're really thinking through is systems engineering and quality control at scale. So previous conference I was at this year, Stanford Blockchain Conference, mm-hmm. NASA was brought up 4 times at this sub-conference there called the DeFi Security Conference, right? And you know, how do we build these crypto organizations that can ship things like NASA ship things, right? Because when you ship software in the blockchain, right, it's similar to shipping software in a spacecraft where you have to really know what you're doing, right? So how do you build organizations that are distributed, that are decentralized, but can really perform at a high level, even better than their centralized alternatives? So.
Yeah, I'd say, you know, jumping off that point, I think right now it's like we're seeing a lot of DAOs that are like DeFi DAOs, largely because that's where a lot of the capital interest was from just degens during like the bull run. From there, I think we started to see sort of like the emergence of these, like, I'll refer to them now as like protocol or like product DAOs, and then like social DAOs and investment DAOs. Generally, I think investment DAOs aren't great because I think most people that are in investment DAOs were getting very lucky and aren't actually good investors. And then all of a sudden they get wiped out in the bear. With that, I think we'll start to see like social DAOs are cool. They just like don't scale super well. It's pretty much like your Soho House model. Like you can't have a ton of them. From there, I think like product DAOs make a lot of sense, and it's more how do we start to build these organizations to create new kinds of products besides just DeFi. Jumping from there, I think, so I was at MCon, like the Metacartel conference 2 weeks ago, and like similar conversation to what you were referencing, except instead of NASA, we were talking about Amazon. And so Amazon is probably one of the best organizations in the world, like hard stop. And especially what makes them great is they're really good at deploying capital. And so with Amazon, they will start with a very small experiment, allocate one person who's in charge of that experiment. If it goes well, they'll scale up, they'll give it a little bit more funding, maybe put 2 more people on the team, et cetera. All of a sudden, you've developed AWS. But then the big thing there is like, if at any point one of these experiments fails, like they cut funding. And so it's really a lot about like bet sizing and like ensuring that you're allocating resources properly, which is what makes Amazon such a great organization. With that right now in a lot of product DAOs, what you see is like, you get one contributor who's like, I am the best person at evaluating risk. You should pay me $1 million a year. All of a sudden, you've shot your treasury. You've hired someone that maybe actually wasn't the best person. They make a bad decision. Now the entire DAO is in trouble.
Yeah, I think all of this kind of resonates for us. The way I think about the DAO component for us is our community is comprised of what I would describe as renegades, right? Like our community is all people that have already gone independent. So they're independent consultants, they're product strategy houses, they're law firms, they're accountants, they're like small firms, and they keep it like relatively small, right? That's who makes us up right now, and that kind of renegade energy has been really cool. We're still really young, we're effectively babies, and like still developing, of course, but one of the things I've noticed is that like anything we do that's at all like fuck the system, they're like, yes, I'm there. Absolutely, yes, I will be there. So I found that kind of that DAO experiment has actually been way more about culture than it is about them actually doing anything, right? Like we talk about DAO governance all the time, and candidly, it doesn't matter yet. But what we've been excited about is how do we leverage these people who are really smart and have already taken that first jump to be that kind of first wave to drag everyone else behind them. So how do I pull you one day out of McKinsey instead and you come work in Twali? That's what we're excited about, and that's how we kind of see our DAO is this kind of group of evangelists ultimately.
Great. So we have time for one last question. Could you speak to any metrics around growth and kind of what you've seen, not only in your projects or what's exciting in terms of growth in this kind of future of work on Web3 world, and how has that evolved or changed, if at all, given the broader market conditions and the downturn at the moment?
I'm super bullish because of all the venture capital sitting on the sidelines, right? So you need professional services to start a company, right? And all these companies, out in the conference hall, they're going to need security auditors. They're going to need accountants, right? They're going to need, designers and developers, right? So as long as there's venture capital, as long as there's new companies being started, very bullish. And Spearbit, we've doubled our revenue since the bear market started. So, yeah.
Congratulations. Great.
Yeah, I mean, generally I would say one of the biggest examples I go with is like, if Uniswap turns on its fee switch, it's generating a few $100 million a year in revenue. That makes it one of the largest tech companies out there, not even in crypto. With that, using DAOs to build these really great decentralized products is like here to stay, and we're seeing it happening time and time again. Osmosis, DYDX, Uniswap, just the beginning with like DeFi, and then we can all of a sudden start moving into other industries. With that, we also are seeing that these organizations are actually pretty good at attracting top-tier talent, retaining them, and doing good work. It's like Uniswap Labs has probably about 100 of some of the best researchers. DYDX, Osmosis, et cetera, all have very large organizations as well. And if you go like full decentralized, Maker has a ton of talent. And so, we should anticipate that these organizations are here to stay and can do very impactful work.
Yeah, I think our revenue has actually also doubled. Nice. Stoked about that. But I think we said earlier, right, no one gives a fuck how the sausage gets made. And overwhelmingly that remains true. So in the bear market, prior to the bear market, we had 75% of our clients were coming to us inbound. Now it's 80. So the demand is still very much there. It's just like, actually the quality of the demand has improved. So the Web3 projects that we work with are no longer like dinky first day DAOs, which no shade, we were there too. But now they're like, hey, we're DeFi protocols, we're accelerator programs, we're DAOs that are building XYZ, right? And that quality barometer has gone up because obviously we have the initial great washing away of crap. So we've been grateful, and there's never been a better time, I think, to be in the talent game.
Yeah, at Braintrust, so our first year of operating the marketplace was in 2020. We actually launched. We tried to launch on March 13th of 2020.
Uh-oh.
Couldn't break the news cycle that week.
Yeah.
But COVID was obviously the lockdown was a big tailwind to our model. So we thought we'd do $1 million in GSV that first year. GSV for us is gross service value. That's just clients paying talent. We ended up doing 6. 2021 we did 33 million in GSV, and this year we'll probably clear 100 million in GSV. Awesome. And so it's growing really quick. It's all just based on the token referral engine, right? All the talent comes from referrals from other talent. The clients come from a connector program. If you go to braintrust.com, sign up, get a unique code, start referring talent or clients, the protocol will pay you Braintrust tokens as soon as those folks start transacting. So it's the flywheel's been spinning stronger and stronger even through the downturn.
That's incredible. Congratulations to all of you. So I think we're up on time. Thanks so much for a great discussion. Thank you to the audience. And I'm sure we can talk about this topic all day, but congratulations and great job on pushing this forward for each one of your unique projects.